The sky above the Valari homeworld shimmered like glass under pressure, full of color and movement, but always on the edge of breaking. Beneath those strange, glowing clouds stood a peaceful people, thin, tall, with soft blue skin and wide eyes that had never seen war. The Valari had been part of the galaxy's great balance for centuries, always observing, always offering peace, never asking for more than they needed. Their world, a jewel of calm rivers and ancient crystal towers, was considered unimportant. By the Galactic Council, too small to matter, too quiet to threaten, the Valari never built weapons, never launched fleets, never tried to rule. They lived simple lives, guided by memory, poetry, and soft-spoken wisdom passed down from generations. But even in their gentleness, they had one unshakable belief: kindness must be given freely, even when no one is watching. Years ago, too many for most to remember, a strange ship fell from the stars. It wasn't like anything the Valari had seen. Its hull was scorched, torn open by plasma fire, leaking smoke and sparks as it tumbled toward their atmosphere. The Council had already warned them never to interfere with ships from Earth. Humanity, they said, was dangerous, unpredictable, a growing species with too much power and too little patience. Do not make contact, the Council said. Not involve yourselves in human affairs. As the burning vessels screamed across the sky, crashing into the forest near their sacred lake, the Valari had a decision to make. They did not hesitate. While the Council watched from orbit, recording silently, the Valari sent healers, engineers, and caretakers to the crash site. What they found inside the broken ship was not a threat. It was a team of explorers, wounded, unconscious, nearly dead, and they were human. The Valari cared for them, not because it was permitted, not because they expected anything in return, because no soul, no traveler, no living being deserved to die alone in the dark. For weeks, the humans were nursed back to health, protected from disease and stress, given food and shelter. Their commander, a man named Elias Grant, had been barely breathing when he arrived. But when he opened his eyes and saw the alien faces around him, kind, gentle, watching him with calm concern, he cried, not from pain, but from the strange and unexpected safety of it. He knew what the Council had said about Earth. He knew this kind of help would bring trouble, yet the Valari never asked for payment, never feared retaliation. They only asked that one day, should the Valari ever be in danger, someone would remember. When Grant and his team were well enough to leave, they didn't take records, no scans, no coordinates. They left behind a promise instead, one whispered. By every survivor, as they boarded their repaired vessel, gifted with Valari crystal fragments for navigation. We will never forget this, Grant had said, not as long as Earth breathes. And then just like that, they were gone. The years passed. The Council punished the Valari, silently cut trade, removed representation, blocked transmissions. No one said it was because of the humans, but everyone knew. The Valari lost their standing in the galactic order, left behind in favor of louder, richer, and stronger species. But they never spoke of regret, never asked for help. They went on, with their ways, tending the gardens, singing the sky songs, teaching their children to care for the weak. And when war came to other worlds, they watched quietly, offering aid to any who asked, but rarely being asked themselves. Then came the day the sky shattered. It began with fire. Strange ships descended without warning, dark vessels marked with Council codes, but flying no true banners. Raiders. Mercenaries paid under the table by the Council to do what it couldn't publicly condone. They came not to conquer, but to strip the Valari of their natural resources, to take what little technology they had, to crush their soft culture, so others could build something stronger on the bones. The Valari were scientists, artists, healers not. Soldiers, their towers fell, their lakes boiled. Their music was silenced by screams. No one came to help. Valento watched from afar against Island as always. It was the youngest of the Valari. The ones who still believed in miracles, who found an old transmitter deep beneath the Grand Temple. It hadn't been used in generations. Covered in dust, it still held a single saved message recorded by Elias Grant long ago. A simple audio file, his voice rough with emotion. You've saved us. One day, if you ever need us, we'll come back. We'll come back with everything we've got. The young Valari stared at the transmitter, then at the destruction above. They were told Earth was too far, that the humans didn't care, that it had been too long. But something inside them, a spark of belief, fused to die. They activated the beacon. They sent the message to the humans. If you remember us, we need you now. No one expected a reply. Days passed. The raids continued. Fires burned. Skies turned gray. Then, above the world, stars blinked out, not from clouds or smoke, but from something massive. Dozens of objects emerged from behind the moon. Silent, sharp, unlike any known ship. The Valari looked up and trembled, not in fear, but in disbelief, because the stars hadn't disappeared. They had been blocked by ships wearing the flag of Earth. The stars were still glowing when the Earth fleet arrived. But now, those stars looked different. Sharper, hungrier. Where once soft clouds floated over Valari cities, now giant shadows passed across the sky. They were not falling. They were not circling. They were watching. And those who lived on the ground, those who had cried for help and never expected an answer, now stood silently in the streets, their eyes full of something they hadn't felt. In weeks, hoped the ships above weren't smooth and elegant like council cruisers. They didn't flash with gold or shimmer with artistic design. These were human vessels, heavy, dark, and armed to the teeth, built not for diplomacy, not for peace, but for survival. Each one was a fortress of steel and fire, and they hung in the sky like a warning no one could ignore. They didn't announce themselves, didn't flash lights or play peaceful music like the old Earth broadcasts. They just stood there, quiet as the void, staring down at the ruins of Valari cities, and waiting in the council core worlds. Panic bloomed. No one had seen a Terran fleet in generations. Not like this. Not outside Earth's borders. The humans had kept to themselves after being humiliated and sanctioned by the Council long ago. They traded rarely, responded coldly. And over the years, most believed that Earth had gone quiet because it was weak, because it had accepted its place, because it had lost the will to fight. But now the Council knew the truth. Earth hadn't been silent because it was weak. Earth had been waiting on the Valari homeworld. Survivors gathered under broken towers. Their elders, many injured and trembling, stepped out into the open as the largest human ship marked TDS resolute lowered silently toward the capital. Its engines made no sound. Its lights were off. It moved like a ghost, casting a shadow. Over the last standing crystal spire, the moment it touched down, ramps hissed open. And from that darkness walked the first human seen on Valari soil in decades. He was tall. His armor was black and gray, covered in dust. His helmet stayed on. But the moment he stepped onto the cracked marble ground and looked at the Valari elders, he knelt on one knee and lowered his head. Behind him, dozens of soldiers did the same. No one spoke. Then, from what comes inside his helmet, came a simple voice. We received your call. We remember. You are not alone. Tears flowed silently down the faces of the Valari, not because the humans had brought weapons, not because the fleet had scared off the raiders, but because someone remembered. In a galaxy where kindness was seen as weakness, where mercy was punished, someone remembered what it meant to be loyal. The raiders didn't retreat immediately. Their ship still floated at the edge of the system, waiting to see what Earth would do. The Council, too, held its breath. It issued no official orders. It released no statements. But behind closed doors, meetings turned into arguments. Emergency votes were called. Some demanded Earth be confronted. Others warned that doing so would risk awakening an enemy they couldn't control, because they all knew the ancient history. Before the Council was strong, before alliances were firm, there had been a war where Earth had stood alone against the Hollow. A war where humans, though outnumbered and outgunned, had fought until entire sectors collapsed. A war that ended only because Earth had sacrificed everything to stop a greater darkness. And afterward, the council had punished them for it. Out of fear, out of jealousy, out of cowardice. Now Earth was back, and this time they were not looking for recognition. They were here for gratitude. Admiral Ryan Hale stood on the bridge of the Resolute, eyes locked on the tactical display. Red dots marked the raiders. Blue dots marked Earth's fleet. None of the red dots moved, but Hale knew they would try. They always did. "Open a system-wide channel," he said. A moment later, his voice echoed across the stars, through civilian bands, raider signals, council listeners. "This is Admiral Hale of the Terran Defense Fleet. The Volari people are under our protection. We are not here for conquest. We're not here for negotiation. We're here because they helped us when no one else would, and Earth does not forget." The raider ships didn't respond, but 3 of them broke formation and began charging weapons. Bad decision. Without a single word, Earth's fleet moved. Silent, precise, unforgiving. The Resolute didn't fire. It didn't have to. The other ships took the lead Tehran destroyers, with eye-guided weapons and gravity-piercing cannons locked on targets with surgical speed. The first raider ship was gone in seconds. No explosion, just dust and silence. The second fired a desperate volley. Useless. Terran point defense shredded the missiles mid-space, and a railgun strike folded the raider like paper. The third tried to fly to be caught in a net of light from Earth's orbital disruptor. It stopped moving. Then, it too vanished. The message was clear. Earth wasn't here to talk. The rest of the raiders jumped away. On the Volari homeworld, people cheered for the first time in months. Children ran through the broken streets. Survivors climbed to rooftops just to stare at the fleet above. Strange, powerful, terrifying, and beautiful. Not because of its strength, because that strength had come for them. Velari Counselor Sonari, oldest among the elders, stood before Admiral Hale that evening. Her voice trembled. "We never thought anyone would come." Hale removed his helmet. His face was lined with age, his eyes cold, but his voice was soft. "You saved us when we had nothing. You didn't have to, but you did. That's not something we forget." She looked up at the stars. "The Council will retaliate. They can try," Heli said. "But they won't be facing the Volari anymore. They'll be facing us." And far across the galaxy, deep in the heart of the Council's chambers, that truth was finally sinking in. Earth had returned, and the stars would never be the same. The halls of Earth's Defense Command were not loud. There were no blaring sirens, no rushing footsteps, no shouting officers. Everything moved with cold precision. Comm screens, silent corridors, dark panels glowing with quiet energy. Will mill wide. I'm surrounded. We were well on Jabal. That stillness was something far more powerful than noise a rising storm. In the heart of Earth's orbital fortress, miles above the planet's surface, leaders gathered not to debate what had happened on Volari, but to plan what would happen next. At the center of it all stood Admiral Elias Grant, the same man once saved by the Volari all those years ago. His face had changed, lined by time and burden, but his eyes still held the weight of memory. He hadn't spoken about the Volari in decades. The incident was erased from official records, sealed, forgotten by everyone, except him and the few survivors who'd sworn a private oath long ago. Beneath that alien sky, now the oath had returned, and it had come with fire. He stood alone in the war room, watching footage from the fleet. The Resolute, hovering like a silent god over Velari's burning capital. The quick strikes against raider ships, the cheers from civilians below, all played out like a legend, but it was real. Earth had made a move that the galaxy would never forget, and still, it wasn't enough. "Send word to the deep stations," Grant said finally, voice steady. "It's time to wake the Black Arcs." Across the room, the officers paused. There was no need to ask if he was serious. If Admiral Grant had spoken those words, then the decision had already been made. The Black Arcs were Earth's oldest. Long-range carriers, colossal ships hidden in uncharted systems, storing weapons and vessels designed for total war. They had been sealed after the Hollow conflict. Not because Earth couldn't use them, but because Earth had chosen restraint. Now that restraint was over. The Valari had lit a fire that could no longer be put out, but far away. The Council still believed they could contain it. On the capital world of Rithon Prime, the Supreme Chamber of Galactic Order convened an emergency session. 12 species, 12 leaders. None of them human. Their faces were stretched by fear, their voices sharp with panic. Earth has violated the Council mandate. They are threatening Council-authorized space. They have militarized an unrecognized world. But even as they argued, none dared speak what they truly feared, that Earth had not grown powerful. Earth had always been this powerful. They had just hidden it. One counselor, a cold-eyed, Cytheri warlord named Vrel, leaned forward, claws tapping the metal table. "We must strike now, while they're exposed. Show force. Hit them before they gain momentum." Another counselor, an aged Kel diplomat, shook his head, "And risk waking what sleeps behind them. This is what they've revealed. Imagine what they've kept hidden." There was silence, because deep down, they knew Earth had never forgotten, and Earth's version of gratitude could shake the very stars. Back on Valari Prime, the rebuilding had begun. Human engineers worked beside Valari healers. Terran drones hovered through shattered cities, planting generators, building shelters, repairing broken infrastructure in hours. But it wasn't just reconstruction, it was a message. Earth didn't come to hand out food and fly away. Earth came to stay. And the Valari, once humble and hidden, now stood under a shield of steel no Council race could penetrate. Children who had known nothing but fear now walked behind armored human marines, offering flowers and crystals in silent thanks. The bond was growing not from blood, not from contracts, but from something deeper, from something old. From a promise, Admiral Hale stood beside Counselor Sonari at the edge of a cliff that overlooked the newly repaired city. She was quiet, watching the lights flicker on below. "When your people came the first time," she said softly, "we never expected you to survive." "We didn't," Howley replied. "Not as we were." "You've changed," she said. "Your machines, your silence, even your eyes." Howley nodded. "We stopped expecting others to care, so we prepared. Alone." "Why come back?" He turned to her, eyes hard. "Because we don't forget the ones who did care." And across space, in hidden places, old Earth signals pulsed again, waking. Old codes, opening vaults. One of the Black Arcs, the TDS Vindicator, rose from the ice of a dead moon in the Vossen wastes. Its engines glowed cold blue. Its guns remained sealed, but its direction was clear. Valari space. The galaxy's balance was shifting. Some species began reaching out to Earth quiet messages, offers of friendship, fear disguised as diplomacy. Others began fleeing Council space entirely, sensing what was coming. And deep within Earth's own command archives, a special program began running. One locked with a code over 70 years old. Elias Grant's voice, young and echoing, played across the system. "To any future Terran officer, if the Valari ever called, drop everything. They saved us when no one else would. You will answer. You will protect. You will fight, no matter the cost." Admiral Grant listened to his own voice from the past and closed his eyes. It had begun. Not just a mission, not just a defense, but the return of an idea Earth had buried deep. Honor, a concept. The galaxy had long forgotten, but one Earth never would. The first thing the galaxy saw was shadow. not the kind cast by stars or moons, but a new darkness that spread across systems like ink and water. Ships began vanishing from Council trade lanes. Patrol cruisers stopped responding. Distress beacons blinked out one by one. Entire sensor nets failed not from attacks, but from sheer overwhelm. Something massive was moving. And it wasn't using Council lanes or warp gates. It was rising from hidden places, from old orbits and forgotten moons, from dead zones marked uninhabitable on official maps. What they were seeing, what no one dared believe, was Earth's real fleet, the Black Arcs. And they were not ships. In the traditional sense, they were spaceborne cities, each larger than 100 Council dreadnoughts combined. Shaped like floating obelisks of dark metal, scarred by time, but humming with unreadable energy. Their hulls reflected nothing. Their drives made no noise. They moved with a stillness that sent chills down the spine of every race watching them rise. These weren't fleets built for battle, they were fleets built to end wars, and they shouldn't exist, not because the Council outlawed them, but because no one thought Earth could ever build them alone. But Earth had, and they had done it in silence. While the Council gossiped and postured, Earth had dug deep into the crust of cold planets, mined dead stars, and fused ancient tech with modern AI. They had studied the Hollow War, not to remember loss, but to prepare for a return. They hadn't hidden because they were ashamed. Had hidden because they knew this day would come, and now it had. Over Valari's space, the first of the Black Arcs arrived. Its name was Judicia-2. It didn't come through warp. It didn't descend from orbit. It simply appeared its presence, warping gravity, bending light, pulling time itself slightly off-center. Valari elders fell silent. Human commanders saluted. And Council satellites watching from afar sent back one terrifying message: the Ark is active, and it's not alone. Within hours more came the Vindicator, the Soul Reaper, Ash Warden, the Ghost of Terra. Each one held thousands of human warforms, piloted, AI-linked, and fusion-driven. Thousands more carried evacuation systems, building modules, planetary shields, and rapid defense systems. These were not just warships. They were civilization carriers. It's meant to protect or wipe clean, whichever Earth decided. And right now, Earth had decided to protect. Admiral Hale stood at the command deck of the Judicator, eyes focused on the glowing path ahead. Around him, Terran officers monitored system feeds as the Arc scanners lit up the entire Valari region. The scale of the operation was enormous, but none of them hesitated. This was why the Arcs were built. This was the oath they had trained. For status? Holai asked. Judicator is stable. Shields holding, Valari City grid linked to Arc's generators. Atmospheric scrubbers online. 3 more Arcs en route from deep vaults, 4, 6, and 12, and the Council. Scrambling. Intercepted chatter from Rithon primes, adjusting mobilization, but they're stalling. Didn't think we'd respond like this. Hale's eyes narrowed. Let them keep stalling. Meanwhile, on the surface, the Valari walked through streets they barely recognized. In just days, Earth's presence had transformed their world. Floating Terran drones repaired entire districts. AI construction towers rebuilt housing in minutes. Defense grids now lined the skies, projecting a dome of invisible power over every settlement. For the first time in their history, the Valari had shields. But even more than technology, it was the people who changed things. Human Marines patrolled alongside Valari Guardians, showing respect and discipline. Children from both worlds played in shared zones. Markets reopened, mixing Valari crystal foods with Earth-grown crops and rations. And every day, from across the stars, messages poured in from other peaceful races. Forgotten species, old colonies, asking to join. Earth's protection zone. The galaxy wasn't just watching. It was remembering what loyalty looked like. But not everyone welcomed it in deep space. Council fleet of 22 ships closed in on the Valari sector. They claimed it was a diplomatic escort. Earth knew better. Admiral Grant watched from the Ash Warden as the Council vessels crossed the perimeter line. Give them one warning, he said. A single Terran satellite pulsed light across the voida. Brief flash in Council code. Turn back. Earth stands. Here the Council ignored it. Their lead destroyer charged a plasma lance and took aim targeting not the humans, but a Valari shield station. That was their mistake. Because Earth didn't fire. The Judicator just blinked, and the Council ship vanished. No sound. No fire. Just gone. The rest of the Council ships stopped. Admiral Grant sent a direct message. This is not Earth's war. But if you insist on threatening those under our protection, then you will learn exactly what we've built in the shadows you left us. You exiled us. You tried to make us disappear. Now we stand not for power, but for the promise you all forgot. And that promise is loyalty. Back in Valari cities, the people gathered by the thousands. They stood before projection. Towers as the message from Earth echoed across the skies in every language. To those who remember kindness, Earth remembers you. To those who believe peace is weakness, Earth remembers you too. The Galactic Council still didn't understand. They had seen Earth's ships. They had watched the black arcs rise from the void. They had witnessed a Council destroyer vanish with a single flash of gravity-bent space. Yet deep within their silver chambers and floating palaces, they still believed this was a bluff, a show of force meant to scare, not to strike. They thought Earth could be reasoned with or pushed back with political weight. But Earth wasn't here to talk anymore. Those who had ever fought alongside Terrans knew what that really meant. Because Earth's wrath was not a negotiation, it was final. On Valari Prime, Admiral Hale stood quietly in a command tower overlooking the newly rebuilt capital. Behind him, holoscreens displayed Council fleet movements across 4 systems. Earth's long-range scans had mapped every approaching vessel, every fuel trail, every beacon. The Council was gathering forces near the border, but not too close. Not yet. They were probing, testing, like wolves circling prey. Unsure if the herd might fight back. They're waiting for us to blink, said Captain Myra Noan, her armor scratched from ground patrols. They think we'll stand down. There. Wrong, Hale replied, his voice low, because they still think this is politics. He tapped the console beside him, and a new feed opened live footage from one of Earth's forward outposts in the Cridian Belt. 3 Council cruisers had breached the note entry zone. A Terran corvette, TDS Lancer, had issued 3 warnings. No response. One of the Council ships fired a single pulse beam named near. Not directly at the humans. A warning shot. A final mistake. In less than 3 seconds. Lancer's onboard AI activated countermeasures. A kinetic round fired from a rail coil older than any. Council tech punched through the Council ship's hull and tore it in half. The other 2 ships ran without a single response. The Lancer didn't chase. It simply waited, floating still. Weapons cold once more. On the Valari surface, word spread quickly. Earth had drawn the line, and when the line was crossed, someone vanished. But for the Valari, it wasn't a war. It was something else. It was a feeling they had never known. Before, they had been scholars, singers, philosophers for thousands of years. They had never even imagined soldiers walking their streets, yet now, when they looked at Earth's warriors, armored and silent, they didn't feel fear, they felt safe, because Earth wasn't here to control them. Earth was here to repay a debt. A young Valari child named Thalon, no older than 6 cycles, stood beside a Terran Marine during a patrol. The Marine, a giant by comparison, kept his weapon lowered and his helmet off. Thalon looked up and asked, "Is it true you came from across 1,000 stars? Just for us?" The Marine knelt, removing a small patch from his arm of faded insignia. Of the first crashed Earth vessel, the Valari had rescued decades ago. "My grandfather was on that ship," the Marine said. "If he hadn't been saved, I wouldn't be here." The child blinked. "So this is your home now?" The Marine looked around. "They're my home, but my duty." And then, above them, Earth's skyburners roared past in formation black, arrow-shaped. Bombers capable of silent atmospheric strikes from orbit to ground in under 5 seconds. The people below didn't run. They looked up in awe. They knew what Earth's fleet could do. But more importantly, they knew why Earth was here. Back in, the galactic core pressure was mounting. The Council was losing control, not just politically, but symbolically. Other races were whispering doubts. Treaties were being questioned. Minor systems were requesting Terran protection, or at least neutrality. For the first time in centuries, the Council wasn't feared. Earth was, desperate to shift perception. The Council made a calculated decision. They would send a formal peace envoy to the Valari system. Not a threat, not a fleet, just a diplomatic, cruiser bright white, unarmed. Carrying envoys from 6 species and 1 former human liaison who had defected during the Hollow War. They thought Earth would listen. They thought Earth still cared about the old ways. The diplomatic cruiser arrived on the edge of Valari space, with all its beacons active, broadcasting friendly greetings in 12 languages. It requested landing access. It pledged peaceful intentions. Earth didn't respond. The cruiser repeated the request. Still no answer. Finally, after 3 hours, a signal was received. It was audio only. 1 line, spoken by a cold, synthetic voice. Earth does not negotiate under threat. Then, from behind the envoy cruiser, space bent. The ghost of Terra. A black arc not seen in nearly a century, uncloaked. The envoy cruiser's crew panicked, attempting to reroute. But there were no weapons fired, no tractor beam, no warning. Lights instead, the envoy ship's engines simply died one by one, systems shut down. Artificial gravity collapsed, lights flickered off. Communications failed. Then a message was transmitted directly into every crew member's personal neural link. You demanded a meeting, but you come backed by fleets. You speak of peace, but you carry spies. This is not how you speak. To a people repaying a debt. This is not how you approach Earth. Leave. The cruiser was allowed to drift back into Council space intact, but humiliated it became clear. Earth was not interested in talk, because talk hadn't saved them during the Hollow War, and talk hadn't protected the Valari from burning. Only action had, and Earth had come to act on Valari Prime. Counselor Sonari stood with Admiral Hale as thousands of Valarian humans lit ceremonial lanterns beneath the stars. She looked at him with quiet wonder. You didn't come for war, she said. But you fight better than any race we've seen. Hale nodded. Don't enjoy war. But when we do fight, we make sure it never has to happen again. She looked at the sky where Earth's fleets now formed a ring around the planet, and if the Council keeps pushing, Hale's voice was cold but steady, then they'll learn what kind of peace Earth brings. 'Cause for Earth, kindness was never weakness, and gratitude was not measured in words, it was measured in how far they were willing to go for those who had once saved them. In the farthest corners of the galaxy, where forgotten empires once ruled and stars were born in silence, a strange wave of realization began to spread. It did not come with explosions. It did not come through war cries or invasion. It came quietly through whispers, broken data feeds, intercepted broadcasts, and the final echoing images from dying Council ships. Images of Earth's black arcs hovering in silence, of Terran Marines walking through fire untouched, of Council fleets crumbling into dust without a chance to scream. The galaxy had mocked Earth for a long time. They had called them impulsive, primitive, too emotional, too divided. But Earth had never forgotten. And now, the rest of the galaxy realized what that meant. For centuries, the Council had held its power not through kindness, but through fear. Not through wisdom, but through control. They punished the small, rewarded the loud, and ignored those who didn't bow. The Valari had been one of the quiet ones, gentle, peace-loving, soft in every way the galaxy hated. That's why the Council had let them suffer. That's why the raiders were sent. That's why no one helped. But Earth had helped. And now the stars were burning with the weight of that decision. Council systems began to fracture. The outer colonies, long neglected, barely supported, started to pull away. Trade. Then with communication blackouts. Then, with open calls for Earth's protection, entire species, once loyal to the Council, began quietly shifting their allegiance. Not through war, not through protest, but through fear. Because Earth didn't just save the Ver. Earth was building something new, a quiet alliance, one made without signatures or fancy declarations, one born from memory and debt, and the galaxy realized all at once that Earth had been watching them the whole time, not judging, just waiting. Back on Valari Prime, the atmosphere had changed. The people still sang their sky songs, still walked their crystal paths, but now they wore Terran tech around their arms. They carried Terran beacons in their pockets. They stood taller when Terran ships flew overhead, not in fear, but in unity. And in the shadow of a mountain once used as a sacred temple, something new rose. The Pillar of Oaths, a tower built of Earth's alloy and Valari crystal, wrapped with names not of kings or warlords, but of every Terran who had once been saved in that long-forgotten crash. At its base stood Admiral Elias Grant, now old, now tired, but with fire still in his eyes. A Valari child stepped forward and asked him, "Why did you come back, even after so long?" Grant looked at the tower, then at the stars. Because in space, people forget fast, but Earth doesn't. He rested his hand on the engraved names. "You helped us when no one did. We came back to say thank you. And we don't say thank you with words. We say it with action." The child blinked. "But the Council is angry." Grant smiled sadly. "They should be, because we remember what they forgot." Across the galaxy, things began to unravel. On the Council core worlds, unrest spread. Protests on Rithon Prime. Blackouts in the Gellery zones. Armed revolts in the far sectors. They thought they could fix it with politics, with new laws, with propaganda. But it was too late, because Earth's version of loyalty had already gone viral. Not through conquest, but through example. When the Council tried to attack again, this time sending a stealth fleet to sabotage a Valari supply route, they made their final mistake. They believed Earth would react like them. That Earth would simply repel the attack, scold the enemy, show mercy. But Earth didn't respond like the Council. Earth responded like Earth. The stealth fleet was intercepted mid-jump. Earth's gravity net systems locked on to their warp signatures and froze them between space folds. One by one, their vessels were pulled from the void and disassembled, not blown up, not vaporized, but torn apart at the molecular level, engines first, leaving the crews alive in the wreckage to be captured. Then Earth did something the Council never expected. They broadcast the survivors, not in humiliation, but with mercy. Council soldiers, fed and clean, were shown being treated in Terran medical bays. Valari doctors healed their wounds. Human officers questioned them calmly, professionally, with zero torture. Then they were released, escorted back to their systems unharmed, but with one message burned into their memory: we are not monsters. We remember, we protect. Even those sent to destroy us. And that's when the galaxy finally realized the full truth. Earth was not rising as an empire. Earth was rising as a memory made real. A force powered not just by ships and soldiers, but by the idea that loyalty mattered, that kindness deserved to be defended, that when you save a stranger, you are never truly forgotten. Suddenly, old Terran legends began to spread. The Hollow War, the fall of Orion Station, the Exodus Protocol. Stories that had once been treated like myths were now studied like scripture. Across planets, new groups formed, calling themselves the Remembered: refugees, survivors, scholars, warriors, all drawn to the banner Earth had quietly raised, not for conquest, but for honor. Even Council civilians began leaving. Families packed up and took slow transports toward neutral zones under Earth's shield. They didn't carry wealth or flags, just hope. Hope that Earth would make space for them too. And Earth did. They always had. 1 week later, Council High Command held a private vote. 12 races. 12 leaders. And a secret question: Should we strike Earth directly? 9 voted yes. 3 abstained. None voted no. The silence after the vote was long. No one moved. No one cheered, because they all knew. They had waited too long because... Now, every world was watching, and Earth wasn't just defending the Valari. Anymore, they were rebuilding the galaxy, not by threat, but by remembrance. It didn't happen with a single explosion. It didn't happen on a battlefield. The breaking of the Galactic Council began with a whisper. One system went dark, and another refused to answer calls. Then a third, once loyal, sent back Earth's signal instead of the Council's. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't war. It was abandonment. A slow crumbling from the inside out. And the leaders at the heart of the Council couldn't stop it because they no longer understood what held a galaxy together. For years they had ruled with fear, but now fear had a new name. Earth not, because Earth crushed worlds. Not because they hunted Council leaders, but because Earth did something the Council never could. They remembered who helped them, and they returned stronger than anyone imagined. On Valari Prime, the skies no longer wept. The clouds had cleared. Cities once shattered were now glowing with new power grids, medicine, food, and protection. Terran and Valari symbols hung side by side from every tower. Children learned to speak both languages. And in the center of the capital, a new plaza stood named Remembrance Square. But it was not only Valari who gathered there now. Others had come, from scattered moons and broken colonies. Delegations arrived, species once ignored by the Council. Survivors of pirate attacks, victims of Council corruption. They came in small ships, alone or in pairs, with no weapons and no pride. Only hope and Earth welcomed them. No grand speeches, or political handshakes. It's just food, shelter, and Terran guards posted at their borders to say, "You are safe now." For every ship Earth took in, another piece of the Council shattered. The cracks. Spread in the core systems, Council members turned on each other. Accusations flew. Alliances broke. Armies refused to follow orders. Protests ignited in the streets of Rithon Prime, where once the Council had stood untouchable. Now their buildings were burning, the records being torn apart by their own citizens, because everyone had finally seen who truly stood for honor, and it wasn't the Council in orbit above Valari Prime. The Black Ark Ghost of Terra received the data before it even hit the public networks. 8 Council fleets had splintered, declared neutrality. One had defected, openly broadcasting allegiance to Earth's cause. It was Admiral Asol who read the names aloud from the command bridge. Centauri 3, Hikari 7, the Mune Belt. Even the Jarnix rebels. Captain Mira raised her eyebrows. Jarnix? Weren't they hunted by the Council for decades? They remember, Hale said quietly, and that's all it takes now. But the Council wasn't finished yet. They had one last plan, something dark, hidden for centuries. A weapon so old? Even most of their own races didn't believe it still existed. Project SHATTERPOINT. It wasn't a fleet. It was a device buried deep inside a dwarf star. Far from any trade lane, a weapon designed to collapse entire systems. By creating a chain reaction of star deaths, the Council had built it in secret long ago, in case a race ever rose too quickly, like Earth. And now they were ready to use it. Not to win, but to make sure no one could. They launched 3 ships. Silent, fast, cloaked beyond current technology. Their orders were clear. Reach Shatterpoint. Activate the chain. Destroy everything in a 50-light-year radius including Earth, Valari, and all allied systems. But they forgot one thing. Earth had been watching. A Terran spy AI buried in Council. Code for over 30 years? Triggered the moment those ships left their docks. It sent a silent alert across deep channels Earth had built in secret after their exile. Within minutes, Earth responded. From a gravity fold between systems, an impossible ship emerged, something no Council record had ever seen. Vessel built in total silence, never tested, never revealed. Its name, TDS Memory Eternal. It wasn't fast, it wasn't beautiful, it was unstoppable. built with old hollow war tech and new quantum drives. The Memory Eternal intercepted all three Council ships in under 6 minutes. No missiles, no lasers, just pure gravitational distortion. The enemy vessels crumbled mid-jump, vanishing like smoke in the dark. And Shatterpoint. Earth dismantled it in 3 hours. Then they left a beacon in its place. One line broadcast in every council dialect. You forgot the value of kindness. We didn't. The council tried to deny everything, but it was over. Systems refused their orders. Council banks collapsed. Former allies pledged loyalty to Earth. Their entire communications grid failed not because of attack, but because no one answered their calls anymore. And across the stars, Earth stood unshaken. Not one ship lost, not one city touched, not one promise broken. Back on Valari Prime, Admiral Elias Grant stood beside Counselor Sonari in the rebuilt Senate chamber. What? She turned to him and whispered, "They're gone, aren't they?" "The council?" He nodded slowly. "Broken, scattered, forgotten, and Earth." He looked out the glass dome above them, where the black arcs still floated, patient and silent. "Still here?" he said. "Because we didn't come to take control. We came to protect what mattered." "And now?" she asked. Grant smiled, old eyes shining. "Now, we build something better." The galaxy was no longer quiet. It wasn't the kind of noise that came from war or rebellion. No explosions echoed across the stars. No fleets clashed. No planets burned. The sound now was different. It was the sound of rebuilding, of languages mixing in crowded marketplaces, of laughter returning to streets once filled with smoke. It was the sound of Terran ships arriving with supplies, not weapons. It was the sound of children learning a new world. It was the sound of a promise kept. The Galactic Council was gone, not with a scream, but with a whisper that faded into history. Its grand halls had fallen silent. Its flags were no longer flown. The proud species that once controlled everything from shadows now sat scattered, some begging for forgiveness, others hiding in distant systems, too afraid to speak. They had ruled with fear, but in the end, fear wasn't strong enough because Earth had chosen something stronger: gratitude. In the months that followed the fall, the galaxy changed faster than anyone expected. Valari Prime, once a quiet world with no defenses, had become the center of a growing alliance. Earth never claimed control. They never planted their flags on alien soil. But everywhere Earth stood, order returned. Hunger ended. Trade resumed. Borders vanished. They didn't call it an empire, they called it a remembrance. And those who joined did. So not with oaths of loyalty, but with stories. Tales of how they had once helped Earth, how they had offered shelter, or medicine, or even a kind word when no one else did. Some had helped humans generations ago, and Earth still remembered. Others had simply refused to betray humanity when the Council demanded it tanned. Earth rewarded them now with protection, with partnership, with peace. Even races that had once feared Terrans now saw them differently, not as conquerors, but as keepers of memory. On Valari Prime, Central Plaza was now surrounded by stone pillars, each carved with the names of those who had once shown kindness to lost Terran crews. And every day, people gathered there from a dozen different species to offer thanks, to remember, and to listen to the humans who came not with weapons drawn, but with stories of survival, hope, and silent loyalty. Admiral Elias Grant stood in front of the largest pillar, his old hands tracing the carved names. His mind filled with voices from a past only he still remembered clearly. Beside him, Counselor Sonari spoke softly. "So this is how it ends. It's not with battle, but with gratitude." He turned to her, smiling. "No," he said. "This is how it begins." The black arcs remained in orbit not as threats, but as shields. Each one now served a different purpose. One was converted into a peace academy where humans and alien diplomats trained side by side. Another became a mobile hospital, serving border worlds struck by years of council neglect. One arc, the Soul Reaper, was permanently stationed above, a system of newly freed colonies its presence. alone ending decades of pirate raids without a single shot fired. Earth never demanded repayment. They simply said, "You helped us once. We're here to return the favor." And the galaxy listened. Old rivalries faded. Former enemies sat at the same tables. New agreements were made, not forced, not threatened, but written with shared hands and shared understanding. Control this new order. They didn't want to. But everything built now carried the silent shape of Terran influence, firm, steady, and unforgettable. Because what Earth had done was more powerful than war. They had changed the meaning of strength. Far from the center, in the cold of deep space, something else began. A small Valari vessel, escorted by a single human corvette, arrived at an ancient world once used by the Council for Exile. The world had no cities, just silence, ruins, and a sky full of broken satellites. There, they placed a new beacon. It blinked softly in every known language. To the forgotten, to the abandoned, you're not alone anymore. Earth remembers. Across the stars, more beacons followed, planted on worlds that had long been ignored, on stations left to rot, on systems no map had marked in centuries. Wherever the old council had turned its back, Earth now turned to face, not to rule, but to heal one day. A message arrived from a planet beyond Earth's furthest reach, a species unknown to most. No official name, no record in council archives. They sent a single transmission. "We saved a human long ago. We never spoke of it again. We never thought it mattered. We see the lights in the dark, and we wonder, is it too late to be remembered?" The reply came instantly. "It's never too late. We're coming." Because Earth had not built fleets to destroy. They had built them to return. In the Great Hall of Remembrance, on the edge of Valeria's southern continent, the leaders of over 40 worlds gathered beneath the glass dome. They stood not in rank, but as equals, Valari and human, Kel and Mayari. Even former council races stood with lowered heads, not in shame, but in humility. Admiral Grant was there, though now too old to wear the uniform. He stood with a cane, watching as young Terrans and aliens worked side by side to shape the future. He turned to his granddaughter, Lieutenant Reyna. Grantan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Never forget why we came," he whispered. She nodded. "Because someone helped us, and we came back." "Exactly," he said. "And now that we're here, we never leave those who stood with us." In time, Earth would fade into myth again. That's how it always went. But their ships would still fly. Their oath would still echo, and the stars would remember a simple truth that even the galaxy had once forgotten. Humanity never forgets an ally. Their thanks can shake the stars.